Okay, it's week 7, and if you missed things that we went through this week, we're going to do the IA final draft. So I have everybody's first draft in a folder in Google Docs. So if you can't find your first draft with my comments, I can send that to you. So you need to email me if you can't find it. We talked a little bit about this the other day. Most of you will only see the post-IA doc. So just kind of going back to the beginning of this, I got a little ahead of myself here when I opened up. But basically, what all of you will see in your page is basically the IA docs. So I'll go back to actually your class. And this will look different because it's obviously my screen, but the intro docs are all here. And so this was what we basically looked at last year. We have the IA examples. There's a link here to kind of the background of what you have to do for the IA. There's the handbook. So all of these are great things to just see what my comments are, and then to go into the ideas of what you're going to need to do to improve or make that IA better. Now, this is the thing. Like, normally you guys would be done with this, and, you know, you've had some time in between, but, you know, most of you all did one. Well, you all did. So that's good, because if I've had seniors come in and what they did and they submitted in their junior year was basically nothing, and so their score is pretty bad. But all of you actually put the time and effort into it, which is awesome, and so that'll just make this process pretty easy. So basically, if you go in then and you get into week 7, you will all see this. Now, this folder is here because of somebody else, and actually most of you won't see this. But all you're going to be doing is the post-IA documents. There are some links here that just take you through, and we'll go through this in class. There's no real assignment for this. It's just some background to kind of, you know, review the idea of what we should do to kind of get a final submission, how we should go about the problems and fixes. And then the big thing is kind of the grade sheet. So basically what we get out of this, and just to kind of go through this very quickly, this is what I use to grade you. And so you're going to get basically a standards-based grade for your IA. That will be your class grade, and that will go into your first try summative scores. So basically, this is kind of the available points that you get, and then what I do is I apply it to the marks and how it goes to your grade. So 20 to 25 marks is a 4. Very much achievable. And I've had students hit it. And these are the criteria I look at. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about this, but, you know, one of the things that people struggle with often is really C and what that means for reflection. The reflection part seems to be kind of an international mystery in many cases. But I think the thing that you really need to focus on is the second part. You need to talk about the challenges that the historians from your sources faced in trying to answer the question that you submitted. So when you're using their information, you really want to look at, like, well, what was preventing them from providing the answer to your question? And that's not easy to do. And that's why a lot of kids kind of sit here with the idea of they kind of reflect explicitly about their investigation, but they never apply that to the actual people that they use as sources. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this and go into it, but really you guys want to focus on this investigation piece. You want to make sure that you have a clearly organized, analytical essay, very similar to what you would do for the paper 2 and paper 3 exam. You know, you're doing kind of an argument with questions and evidence. You got to have the evidence in there. If you do not have things footnoted or a bibliography with a decent number, remember I said 10 to 15 sources, you're going to have a hard time getting out of the 7 to 9 because it's going to be just commentary. And that's the part that really people sometimes struggle with, is that they just kind of write an essay, they don't apply any sort of focus to their evidence. So please make sure to have that. But then going back to the first part, make sure you have a question. Now, most of you I worked with pretty strongly with this last year before we went on the quarantine of what you needed to have for a question and what that meant. As far as what else is in this folder, a lot of this I'm just going to kind of guide people through. A big thing to remember is how to turn it in. You're going to do it at turnitin.com. The class ID and the password for this is in here. And this is the ID and the password. Pretty straightforward. You got to turn it in there, and the link for turn it in is right here. And so again, this is going to be ending up due in November, and the date that I set for that is November 27th, which is the end of near the end of the trimester. So this is going to be a big summative score for the end of the trimester that we're going to focus on getting done. So this is one sure thing that we have to get in. This is one big thing that goes with the diploma or even for the certificate. So if you're not a full IB student, this is still the way that you get your certificate. And so the IA is what I grade. And one of the things about this is that this could turn in if we don't have anybody sitting for exams. Last year, this is what the seniors got for their history grade. They just turned this in, and that's how their overall IB history grade was determined. For you guys, it could be the same. It could just be 1/4 of typically what they do. And honestly, this is the only thing that they get knowing you. Like, because I score this, I know you, I know the abilities that you have. And if you don't do well on it, and the scores can impact everybody else, because typically in a normal time, they will ask me for 5 of them. And so they're going to usually ask for the highest score, the 2 middle scores, and then the lowest score, and or 2 or 3 lower higher scores. And so they basically say, okay, here's your lowest one. I need to see that one. Give me your highest, and then they'll pick maybe 3 that are kind of in the middle. And so the higher all those scores are, typically the less likely that those scores will get changed, because what happens then is that they use that at IB to kind of evaluate how I scored it based on what they see from those exams. And if they feel like these papers are lower, then they're going to lower everybody's score. So it's very important that you all do very well, okay? And so again, all we're doing this week is you're going to focus on working on the IA in class. So I need you to make sure that you bring those questions, and especially in office hours or by email, to make sure that you have no questions. This is all the time in class we're going to spend on this. And so it's due November 27th, and not doing it will be a requirement, or doing it will be a requirement if you do not have that thing submitted by November 27th. You will be failing for the trimester. So you have to have this in. So this is one of those things that you have to have a completed IA for this course. And ultimately, this is what would have been part of last year. If you didn't have it submitted, it would basically be a required assignment not turned in, and you will not pass until it is turned in. And so please make sure, and I'll talk a little bit more in class about this as well.